Well, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought we'd do a little dive in on my CJ-2A here. I actually found and ran the VIN number on this thing. I cleaned up the VIN tag from the last time you guys saw this thing. If you don't know, I did a video when I acquired this Jeep, that Jeep, and that Jeep. And I did a walk around of all three of these Jeeps. I'll give you guys another quick one of this Jeep, but pretty much all that's happened since then is we sort of cleaned out the interior a little bit on this thing. Wire brushed the top of the engine, cleaned out this rear cylinder, and we've got these cylinders soaking with Marvel Mystery Oil, some PB Blaster. We just threw a bunch of junk at this thing. So yeah, what I was gonna do, I was going to throw this battery in here and see if the starter would kick it over, but we're missing a starter. So I'm not really sure what to do now, but we'll probably just start pulling this old Go Devil engine out of here. Like I said, I ran the VIN number. This is a 1946. It's kind of a mid-year 1946. It was originally this pasture green, which is kind of close to a John Deere green, a little lighter than a John Deere green. But yeah, this thing is super rusty. It's super rough, but it's the only Jeep I own that currently has like the full drivetrain in it. And if you didn't know, this cylinder head was not on this Jeep when I got it, but I had a cylinder head for it that I actually just had. There's the goops we were throwing at her. I've already got a gasket set. Here's the cylinder head for it, so we're ready when the engine's ready. I don't know if that engine's going to go in. I actually managed to pick up another Go Devil engine, so I'm going to have that kicking around. I'll probably do the other engine, save this engine for maybe my M38 or something else, you know. But yeah, and like I said, 1946, this thing's fairly original. Even still has the Jeep placard on the dash, which is great. The old curly Q Jeep shifter with the weird half curve in it. The great thing about this Jeep is it's had this half cab on it for a really long time, which means that the transmission didn't get a lot of water down it. I'm sure it got some in it, but an issue with these Jeeps is the transmission sits open to the world and all the water from snow and everything gets down in these transmissions because the shifter boot never is in good shape, and then these transmissions are always seized and everything's a mess. So, of course, this thing only has one seat. The toolbox is completely rusted out of it. The air cleaner's sitting right there, which isn't, you know, a great sign. Fuel tank's been deleted, or relocated rather. It's got this tank back here, which I don't think's doesn't look like it's in great shape. It's got some wonderful old varnish. I haven't smelled a scent like that in a long time. It's about a 1986 vintage, I think. I don't know, it's old. That's some really old gas. So we got to drain that out. And like I said, where we're going to start with this Jeep is pulling the engine, take it down to the shop and go through the engine, which is going to make this kind of a short video because all I'm going to do is pull this engine out and we'll get it and the other one down to the shop and do evaluation on it. So I'm going to hop to pulling this thing. Basically, pretty simple. Anybody that's pulled an engine's going, this is so dumb. Those of you that haven't, if you don't know, I mean, you just pull everything that's in the way, basically. So I'm going to start with the radiator, and then basically all we have are mounts, fuel lines, coolant lines. A lot of this has already been disconnected, like you can see, because the cylinder head got pulled off this thing. But yeah, that's basically all. And then, of course, before I start, I'll take photos of basically everything as it sits. So anything that I disconnect, I can remember how it was. I can at least remember how it was right now. Stuff like the oil filter and, you know, the starter and all that, I'm just going to have to figure that out, but it shouldn't be too complex. So yeah, pretty much, I'm going to hop to it. Alrighty, well, I've been slaving away on this thing, and we're just about ready to pull this engine. I think, per my estimation, I've got everything off. The only big question now is how I'm going to, you know, rig this thing with the old service truck to pick it out of here. Everything came out fairly easy. I'm taking the bell housing out with the engine instead of leaving the bell housing in. So that was only 4 bolts from the bell housing to the transmission. But the last bolt was the biggest pain in the butt I've ever had to deal with. Like, I swear, that was the hardest thing. That took longer than unhooking everything else. Like getting the generator out, the engine mounts, the radiator came right out, no sweat. Everything was super easy. And then that one bolt, of course, took forever, but should be all ready. I just got to rig it up and pull it out with the service truck. The exhaust is unhooked back there, so that pipe should come out with the engine. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes once I sort of get to picking on it and moving it and everything. That exhaust pipe's kind of a pain in the butt there, but one thing I kind of noticed while I was working on this, I grabbed all these head studs. They were all in the battery tray, and I threw them up here on the engine so I knew where they were. I'm probably going to replace them anyways, but I found this guy in here, which is awesome. This is an old engine heater. It's a head bolt engine heater. So what you do on these is you would take out this center head stud and head bolt, and you'd put this in there in replacement of the head bolt. Obviously, you'd torque it down, and then there'd be an electrical plug up top. And obviously the bottom, it goes right into the water jacket there. You can see the water jacket. And yeah, that would heat up your coolant in the wintertime. And they're funny because I always think they're funny because they just replaced the head bolt, and I just find that hilarious that that was an idea. I've actually got a brand new one of these head bolt engine heaters in the box down in the shop. I'll show it to you guys later when I'm down there, but for right now I'm going to swing the service truck over here, and we're going to get this engine sort of picked up and just see how it comes out. It should pop right out, no sweat. Well, there she is, all pulled out. That was kind of a absolute disaster pulling this thing out. I've never, obviously, these are the first flat fender Jeeps I've ever had. I've never pulled a, you know, a Go Devil out of a flat fender, so it's all a learning curve for me still. And yeah, I figured the easiest way to rig this up is I just cradled the engine with the chain. Seemed to work out great, and shouldn't hurt anything. And yeah, pick this thing out. I still don't know if I prefer pulling it, the bell housing with it or without it. I think with it's the easiest way because all these bolts are like nutted, have nuts on them on the inside, and that looks like it'd be a pain to get at, but oh well, it's out, no sweat. Looks like there's a couple of boiler plugs in here in replacement of the old freeze plugs, so that's funny. I'll bet this thing froze over a few times and popped out freeze plugs as it was sitting. So yeah, we'll get this thing wheeled down to the shop. This engine's going to get probably disassembled most of the way. I want to know if these cylinders are savable. This is obviously this is the questionable one. I don't really want to have to send it out and get it overboard, but obviously, you know, what you end up having to do is what you end up having to do. So we'll just have to wait and see. The old Jeep here looking kind of bare without her engine, but away she goes. It's funny, I unbolted the engine mounts and then they both just ripped off, so looks like I'll need new engine mounts. You can see the pasture green that this Jeep used to be really coming through in the fender well, so that's pretty cool. While the engine's out and this thing's sitting here, I'll probably pull the top off the transmission and pull the PTO cover off of the transfer case and just give everything a quick eyeball check, make sure everything's good to go. No sense in not doing that while, you know, the engine's out getting all sorts of freshened up and everything, but I'll do all that later. I think we'll get this engine down. Hopefully I can find space in the shop, get this engine down there and start ripping into it. Not super, there's like 35 carburetor spacers on it. Look at that. Or not spacers, but gaskets, I guess. That's interesting. Or maybe it was one big multi-layer gasket that has delaminated over the years. Anyways, I'm super scared about these exhaust manifold bolts. I don't want those to break. I don't have really many of these exhaust manifolds, so that's kind of scary. The intake should come off fine. Although I think the exhaust manifold's got a huge crack. Yeah, there's like a huge crack in there in the exhaust manifold, so that's not great. I think the intake manifold is the only thing holding the exhaust manifold together, so fun. But anyways, yeah, I'll probably pull these rubber lines. There's this guy here, and then obviously fuel lines, and that's for the oil filter, and that one's super nasty and dry rotted and stiff and cracked, so I'll take off all the rubber lines and have them remade while it's all going on. But anyways, enough of my yammering. I'm going to go get washed up, move my 1-ton so that stays clean, then get this down to the shop. Alrighty, well, pardon the mess in the shop. We're focusing up here today. I just got this thing thrown on the cart. I totally told myself I was going to drain the oil before I put it on the cart, you know, while the engine was dangling in the air. Would have been the wise time, but I didn't, so I just got her over on the edge. Somebody welded on a smaller nut onto the drain plug. These Jeeps have like a giant drain plug on them. It's like a, I don't know, it's over an inch is what the original like drain plugs were, and somebody put a 15/16 nut on there to make it easier. So we'll go ahead and drain the oil out of this thing, and I can start stripping her down. And I couldn't get a like regular drain pan under here, so I'm totally going to spill oil everywhere all over this setup I've got now. Straight oil at least. It's not, there's no visible water in there. Oil smells pretty old. It smells like old gas too, so this engine was running while Eric had it, and seems like it was running a little rich, but not too bad. Get oil jug over there. So yeah, I'm going to let that drain. I'm just going to start picking away at her, taking apart any old engine. I've already got a list going. I need engine mounts and freeze plugs for sure. If I use this block, I'm still not 100% on that. This cylinder is definitely the rough one yet. This front one will come around no sweat. Like, it really just got some surface rust on it, which is wild that it's, you know, as nice as it is yet. But like I said, I'm going to start picking away at it. I'm not 100% where I'm going to start. Sitting on this cart here, I think I'm just going to pick all the trimmings off of it before the oil pan's going to be the big thing, and then knocking the pistons out is the next big feat after that. I really don't want to touch the intake or exhaust manifolds, but I'm going to have to, of course. At least I think I need the intake. The exhaust manifold, I'm really scared about those bolts. But I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I'm going to start picking away at the trimmings. Once I get the water pump off, I'll pull the timing cover. We'll see how grody it is in there, and we'll actually see what's under there, because some of these had timing chains and some of these had timing gears. I think the gears are better myself. I don't know what the consensus is from the Jeep guys, and well, frankly, I don't really care. So anyways, enough of my ramblings. I'm going to just get to it. Well, I just got the water pump off. I was going to pull off the harmonic balancer. Of course, you got to take the nut off for that. But I threw the big wrench on here, and I noticed, I don't know how visible it is, but we got a little bit of valve action going on there. Those back, you can see those two moving. And it's budging the two pistons, the middle two that are at top dead center. So it looks like the bottom end's pretty healthy on this thing. It's just really just that cylinder. So it looks like I'm going to be in pretty good shape to pull the oil pan off and knock all the pistons out and hopefully clean up that cylinder there. This thing has like zero ring ridge that I can feel at all. There is a tiny little lip. Just the tiniest little lip of ring ridge there. Where I cleared it, you can see where the ring ridge is. Oh, got it all dirty again. Anyways, there's almost no ring ridge. This thing looks like it was in great shape before it ended up like this. Hopefully I can clean everything up. Maybe do new valves. I don't know. We'll see. Alrighty, of course, I didn't film anything, and, you know, I got to remind myself to keep you guys in the loop here, but pulled the timing cover off, and the timing gear, everything looks super clean. You can see all that in there. Like I said, super clean looking. The gear looks really nice. It is an old, and I don't know that I'm going to hold on to it for this engine. It's an old fiber gear, old fiber composite gear, which I'm going to have to do some research on that and find out if that's really worth the trouble or not. I don't really trust it myself, but I suppose it would keep down on like gear chatter and whatnot. So, yeah, it looks clean inside. It's really just the cylinders from up top that are not very clean. Yeah, still just whittling away at it. Gonna pull the fuel pump off now. I pulled the front plate off. I was not really keen on pulling that front plate off, but it's really hard to get the fuel pump off without doing that, so that's why that came off. And yeah, I'm slowly whittling away at it, clearing some grease off of it, doing everything I can to avoid the exhaust manifold, of course. Alrighty, had to make myself do it. Pulled the exhaust manifold off. Surprisingly, we only got 2 broken studs. It's the exhaust manifold studs that break, of course. You can see this backmost cylinder, the one that got all the water in it's got all this fun, colorful stuff in the exhaust port. So hopefully the port and the valve and everything, well, the valve's not broken, or like nothing looks wrong with the valve. I think this old girl will come back around here. I think I want to try, I'm going to tighten down this cam bolt and see if I can't spin the cam over and get all the valves moving. Alrighty, well, we're golden on the valve movement. Surprisingly, all the valves move. I mean, I'm going to be pretty scrupulous looking at the valves when I'm going over this thing, but fortunately they all move, which means they'll all come out fairly easy, which is what I was worried about, of course. Time to pull the valve cover off here. And valve cover off, and she's looking pretty good in here. A little bit of surface rust just from sitting. I mean, this thing has sat for a long time, but I mean, nothing super scary, and like we just saw, all the valves move. So I'm going to get all the valves pulled out of this thing once, well, maybe now. I don't know yet. We're still playing it by ear here, but good thing all the valves move. Everything looks clean inside, which means I'm going to be a little more daring with this cylinder back here, just because this engine looks so nice inside. And I know it's been rebuilt throughout its lifetime. It's 40 over now. Yeah, it's 40 over, bored over, and there's very little ridge on it. Yeah, hopefully like the deck surface and everything comes back around. Nothing's going to be perfect, but you know, we can hope and pray and whatnot. I think I'm going to save the oil pump for just about last. Yeah. Another thing that's probably going to be stuck, but I'm going to try and get out the distributor here. And once the distributor's out, then I can kind of flop this engine around on the table and like pull the oil pan and stuff. Maybe I can get away without putting it on an engine stand, maybe not, we'll see. Alrighty, working away at it. Got 3 of the valves pulled out. I just wanted to show off this awesome old valve spring tool that I picked up off of eBay. I knew I was going to need one for this engine because I've only got a really chintzy overhead valve spring tool. And yeah, so I picked this thing up for like, I don't know, 15 bucks or whatever. And this thing's awesome. You can see it's got this little lock mechanism. So you just stick it in there, clamp it down, lock it, pop it out. You can see I got this valve out. I just need to pop out this valve spring. The only like weird thing is actually popping out the valve springs, but it's not terrible. But yeah, I thought this old valve spring tool was pretty slick. Alrighty, there we are. Got all the valves out of here. Some of these valve seats are a little, like that one super got a lot of carbon buildup in it and whatnot, but the valve seats look all right, all things considered. Obviously, we got a couple of concerning ones. Really just need to get this block down to nothing and start cleaning it up, which is going to be the big thing. That'll be the big tell for everything here, but I want to get it all nice and cleaned up anyways, because I'm going to need one of these for my M38 at the end of the day. And whether it's this one or not, who's to tell yet? But yeah, got all the valves out. I labeled all the valves, what cylinder they were and everything. So if I need to, they can go back in this block. But the current plan is to not reuse those valves. So we'll just see how it goes here. But yeah, I think I'm going to call it tonight. It's like 11 o'clock. Still nice and sunshiny out, but I got work in the morning, so yeah. Alrighty, progress on the old Go Devil here. Obviously, I pulled the flywheel and the clutch and everything off. The clutch actually looks like it was fairly recent, and it looks like there's not a lot of miles on the clutch. It is a little oil-soaked, but, you know, I can ignore that. I just popped the oil pan off of here. You can see there's a little bit of thick jello in the bottom of the oil pan. Nothing too bad, honestly. Like, the oil pan will clean up nice. I don't think anything's super damaged. Everything looks pretty decent inside here. I noticed right in here, it says R030 and M010. So I'm going to assume, and I'm almost certain that means the rod bearings are ground down 30 thousandths and the main bearings are ground down 10 thousandths. Really nice that whatever machine shop did the work on this engine actually stamped that in there. Well, obviously if I'm going to replace them, I'll actually measure them, but it is nice to know that they're probably at that measurement. Of course, it's bored 40 thousandths over already, so I assume that's what that means, is that the rods and mains are bored over. shoot, not a whole lot else. You can see I've got oil spilling that I need to mop up before it hits the floor. I pulled all the head studs out. The last of the head studs are out of there. So I wanted to get everything off before I rolled the engine over. It's kind of nice this engine's so little and light that I can kind of work on it on this table here and not have it on an engine stand plaguing things up yet. I can get this thing torn down to the bare block and assess and know what parts I need. And then when I go to reassemble, I'll probably throw this block on an engine stand, just make it easier to reassemble it. But yeah, up next I got to pull, you know, all the rods out of this thing. I assume 1, 2, and 3 will all go right out the top. Number 4 I know is going to be a pain, but I think I can pop number 4 off, pull the crank out of there, and then just pull number 4 out of the bottom probably will be the best course of action for that. But otherwise, yeah, she's going nice and smooth. Alrighty, well, got her all stripped down. She's ready for cleaning now. That number 4 was the biggest pain in the butt I've ever seen in my life. What I ended up doing with number 4 here is I drove it out the bottom. So I pulled, the only one that actually came right out, I think, was number 2. And then the 1 and 3, I had to pull the crank out, and then, you know, it was a whole mess. But I pulled the crank out, drove 1 and 2 out, got them out nice and safe with a wood block so you don't damage anything, of course. This one, number 4, was the biggest pain in the butt. You can see it looks a lot cleaner. That's because I was digging in there with a hone. It's not looking great, I'm not going to lie. I think a little more hone work and it'll clean up a little bit. I know you guys are seeing that and going, man, you're on crack, but that's just the way she goes. I think that'll clean up a little bit. Number 4 was super nasty, and what I ended up having to do is I drove it out the bottom. Fortunately, these old Go Devils, you're able to do that. I've dealt with some engines that you cannot drive the piston out the bottom, which is a huge pain in the butt. But yeah, I was able to drive that out of the bottom and sort of clean and spray PB Blaster as I went. You can see this top one here's number 4. Of course, got a bunch of gunk down in there. So all the ring lands and everything are super grody on that. And so that one's number 3. That's the one that actually just came right out the top. And you can see that one's pretty clean. But 2 and number 1, I think that one's number 1. You can see it's pretty grody. These are all labeled, of course. I just can't quite remember them as they lay in the box here. But got all those in there, so pretty much we're set to clean this block up. I think it's all going to clean up really nice, actually. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. Like I've said before, this thing doesn't have hardly any like ring groove here. All of these, I was shocked when I just started hitting the deck surface here with a wire wheel real quick. All of the valve seats are cleaning up pretty nice. That one's probably the worst one there, but it'll all clean up pretty nice. So pretty much now the process, I got to clean all my tools up. You can see this absolute mess. I got to clean up the floor underneath me because I made a mess there. And then every other bit and piece, oil pan, just all of that needs to all get degreased, cleaned up. Everything needs to get tidied up. But we did get this old Go Devil torn apart, and I'm surprised. I think I can work with this, which is great. It's not perfect, it's not great, but the whole point of that little red CJ-2A, the whole point of that Jeep is I'm going to throw it together quick, easy, and cheap so that I can, you know, play around with that CJ-2A while I go through all of the work on my M38. My M38 is going to be, you know, the one that I actually do up right. The CJ-2A is just going to be kind of a fun toy. I'm going to try and do things right on the 2A, but not as right as my M38. So I'll do what I can to get this block cleaned up. It shouldn't take a whole lot here. I've pretty much got it stripped down. I'm going to pull this accelerator pedal bracket off. The last thing on it's the oil pump. There shouldn't be anything surprising there. All of the bearings actually looked really nice in this Go Devil here, surprisingly. A couple of them had some grooves in them, but they were nothing. The old hillbilly standard is if you can catch your fingernail in it, it's a problem and you should replace it. I couldn't catch my fingernail in anything I saw, so I'm going to run them as they were. And like I said, nothing's going to be perfect on this engine, but it'll be good enough for who it's for. And of course, got to clean out the water jackets. I pulled out these old boiler plugs. There was a boiler plug there and there. They're on the table here. There's one. Just old rubber expansion plugs. So you stick them in there and tighten down the nut. and it expands and theoretically holds coolant. And yeah, so I pulled those. You can see the water jacket's got a bunch of gunk in it, but while it's all apart, it's the perfect time to get everything cleaned up. Who knows, I might spritz some paint on this thing, but that's all upcoming. I don't think I'm going to film a lot of the cleaning, and I don't know. I might film the reassembly. We'll see how it goes here. But until then, here's the Go Devil for the CJ-2A. Surprisingly, it's in nice shape. And yeah, stick around if you want to see that CJ-2A rip around. So anyhow, thank you guys for watching, sticking around, seeing the carnage of ripping this old Go Devil apart. And well, I'll catch you guys on the next one.